This next trick is a mental trick. I would like everybody out there to just think of a number. Think of a small number so it's not too complicated for you in the future. If you've got a small number in your head, great. Now double it. Double that number. Now add 8 to that new number. You added 8? Wonderful. Now divide that number by 2. And subtract the original number that you were first thinking of. Now with this new number, I want you to associate it with a letter. So if 1 was A, 2 was B, 3 was C, and D was 4, associate what number you have in your head to a letter of the alphabet. Have you done that? Wonderful. Now I'd like you to think of a country what starts with that letter. Think of any country that starts with that letter. Now take that country's second letter and think of an animal that goes into that country. Think of an animal that begins with that second letter. Now think of the colour of that animal. Think of it clearly. Now I can see you all think of an animal and a country and the colour, but the problem with what you're thinking is there are no grey elephants in Denmark. This trick is a simple mathematical approach trick. Whatever number they think of, by doing the simple suggestions which I just mentioned, you'll find out that they always end with the number 4. Now when they end on the number 4, you associate that with the letter D, and the most obvious thought of country that begins with the letter D is Denmark. The second letter is E, so the most second obvious animal they'll ever find is elephant, and colour, most elephants are grey, so you associate the words grey, elephant and Denmark together. You're practically forcing them to think exactly what you want them to think. It really makes for a powerful mind reading effect, and you can do this over the radio or to an entire audience, and you can get great response when you're thinking of exactly what they're thinking of. This next trick is called the perfect telephone trick. I'm going to list 10 objects here: a coin, a hat, a wand, a coat, a book, a key, spoon, cup, cuddly rabbit and dice. Now I would like you to think of one of those objects. Just picture one of those objects in your mind. See it clearly, see it centered there, and just visualize it. Nothing else in the room, just a complete black empty space with nothing but your object. Now take your object and move it around, make it move, make it turn in a circle. Moving objects come clearly. Now I'm going to try and focus on your object. Clearly think, try and send that object to me now. Take that object and send it right to me. Through your screen I can sense your objects as almost furry. It's furry, isn't it? I think you're thinking of cuddly rabbit, but you over there in the audience, you're thinking of dice, aren't you? That's magic. This trick is a practical mental trick. It is best worked when in person to person, admittedly. I'm using it for the camera. I know half the people out there were thinking of cuddly rabbit and the other half were thinking of dice. How did I know you were thinking of those two objects? Well, let me tell you, the list of objects I gave you, it'll probably be up on screen now, is going to be a coin, a hat, a wand, a coat, a book, a key, spoon, cup, cuddly rabbit and dice. Now, if my assistant would bring me that board over, would you bring that board over so I can just point something out to them? Because these 10 objects I've chosen, there's something special about the objects which are listed. Thank you. Hopefully you can all see this. Well, you may have noticed that the two objects which I knew you were going to think about were cuddly rabbit and dice. These were the last two objects in a list. I came up with this trick one morning and I was trying to think of a perfect mental trick, and it occurred to me that memory usually only works by a couple of spaces. You give people a list of items to remember and they'll usually only remember the last few. This is what really helps this trick work, because you've got 10 items here and they can't possibly remember all 10. The true trick of it is, though, you're not asking them to think of an object. You're only asking them to think of one of those objects after you have listed them. Because you think of them after the list, they can only remember the last two mentioned, which was cuddly rabbit and dice. Now in most circumstances, if you just did this list with 10 different objects, they'll think of the word dice, which is the last object. So what I wanted to do was to try and take it away from the last one and make it one of the other objects, which is why I chose cuddly rabbit. This is in place number 9. You may notice that all these items are coin, hat, wand, coat, book. They're all very boring, they're all nothing, they're just objects. They don't have any kind of emotional attachment. While cuddly rabbit, A, is a living animal. It's a physical moving object. you put an emotional attachment word, cuddly, before the actual word. So you've got a lot more in-depth reaction with most audience members to that item. Another thing is it's a single syllable. Coin is just one word. Coin, it's short and to the point. Hat, wand, coat, they're said and they're gone within 2 seconds. Cuddly rabbit is 4 or 5 depending on how you say cuddly. Cuddly rabbit, which means it has longer to be drilled into the spectator's mind. You're drilling that word into longer, so you're trying to emphasize that this is the word they're going to be thinking of later. So you've got these 2 objects from the end. It's not too far from up. You could have it in position 8, but I've got it in position 9 just to be sure. You list out these 10 objects. Once you've listed them, you then tell the spectator to just think of one of those objects. They can only think of the last 2. Most people, 70% of the audience, choose cuddly rabbit. 70%. There will be a small 30% of the audience which still choose dice. This is where the next phase of the question comes in. I didn't do this in the first presentation, but what you say is, I'm trying to read it. You let some time go by before you do that, before I go on too further. You allow a bit of time to go by, let them to picture their object in their mind, transmit it to you. What you're trying to get them to do in doing this is to try and get time pass so they forget where in the list that object was. If they think of the word dice, they might think, well, he just chose the last object, it was more likely to happen. By letting some time go by giving all the story about transmitting images and moving it around, you help emphasize the fact that they can't remember where it was in the list. When it comes to actually making the deduction, you start to tell them, I sense some fur in this object. There's something, this object says furry, isn't it? If they say yes, or if they emphasize that it could be yes, then it's definitely cuddly rabbit. If they emphasize no, or they're a bit hesitant, then you go on by saying, no, this object is definitely furry. I can see it dangling from a car. It's furry dice. You're thinking of dice, aren't you? Now, because you know they were thinking of one of those 2, you've then read their mind. What you've done is turn their negative comment of saying no about fur into a positive about you, because they were thinking of furry. You saw furry dice, while they just saw dice. You turn your statement about fur as being correct, and it was them that was wrong. So whatever they say to that answer, if it's yes, then you go straight into the rabbit, you got it right in 1. If they say no, you go into the furry dice routine, you've still got it right in one question. No question, well, virtually no questions, because you got it right on the get-go. So by using that question about fur, you can then relate it to the dice just by using furry dice. There are other variations on this trick using metal objects such as a coin and a candle holder. You set some metal in this object, and you just use the it's not the candle, but it's the candle holder that you see. Hats and tigers various other objects with furry items. In fact, tigers and lions go equally good as rabbits, because they're visual, aggressive animals. People kind of relate to them more. It's a very powerful mind reading trick. You can just go up to someone on the street, you need no props, you list 10 items, they think of one, and you're telling them what they are thinking. There is nothing more direct. You don't have to write anything down, you don't need to force an object, you're simply asking them to think of something and you're telling them exactly what you're thinking. It's the clearest, most direct mind reading, and I really recommend it. This next trick is called thought transmitter. There's lots of variations on how you can use this effect, but I'm going to start off here. I bet that I can make you land on my ring finger here. I'm sure if I was wearing a ring, what I'd do this with a spectator who was wearing a ring, quite simply. But I'd like you to shout out any number you wish. Would you care to shout out any number you wish, ma'am?
21.
21. You sure you want 21? Ooh, 21, they're trying the hard one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We'll try it again, but this time we'll try it on a different finger. We'll try it on this finger here. Would you like to call out any number you wish?
32.
32. 32. You're trying to fool me here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Twice in a row. This trick is a mathematical based trick. It's an old principle. I've taken 2 different types of mathematics to turn it into this one trick. I do this trick on stage where I bring out 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman, and I do the effect to try and force the woman or something like that. Or I bring up 5 objects, place those objects on the floor, predict which object they're going to choose, and then they choose a number and we always land on that object. It's a good method of forcing, but it's also a prediction technique. With this approach, I sometimes have a married couple, and I bring up the woman who's wearing the ring, usually, and the man gives out any number he wishes, and we count, and we always prove that they've got a love connection, because whatever number he gives us, it always lands on the ring finger. It's a very close, intimate trick, and it doesn't require any props. It's pretty cool. The method for this trick, this is where it gets slightly complicated. We're going to begin with the simple part. If someone was to choose the numbers 1 to 4, and it was this finger here, the ring finger we'll go for first, we go 1. If it was the number 2, it would be the 1, 2. If they chose the number 3, you'll start on the thumb and you go 1, 2, 3. If they chose the number 4, you would include the thumb and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 is you jump as though the pinky was 0 and you go 1. If they said 2, the pinky is 1 and that goes 2. For 1 to 4, you can always get to this thumb. That's when it gets slightly more difficult. That's when you wanted to do 5, for instance. For 5, you would go start on the thumb and you could jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you wanted to do 6, just start with thumb on number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, you'll start on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 8, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But once you've got 1 to 4 down, it's the simple part, really. It's just a matter of counting to that specific finger, and then you can flick it to this finger should you want to. The real secret is when it comes to larger numbers, when you're trying to get up to I only usually do up to 100. You can do it for any number whatsoever, but you'll be counting for a long time after 100, and you say you don't really want to do that. And when you ask someone to think of a number, at best you just ask them to think of a 2-digit number between 1 and 100. 2-digit number eliminates numbers 1 to 9. So by having a number 10 and above, it just makes it a bit better. If you're counting for 10 fingers, it makes it seem even more impossible. The secret for larger numbers. Say they were thinking of the number 33. What I would do then is divide that number by 8. Well, I'm not really interested in the answer. What I need is the numbers remaining. And in 33 divided by 8 is 32. There's 1 remaining. That 1 is important because that means I just go on the number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will land me 33 on this finger. Because there was 1 finger remaining, I end up here. If they said 34, then there'll be 2 fingers remaining, and I go 1, 2. If they said let's try another number. If they said 44, 44 leaves 4 fingers remaining, so I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if I keep on doing this, 5, 6, 7, 8, blah blah blah, I get to 44 here. So it's a matter of mathematical calculations. Now it gets a bit more complicated when you get to say numbers 45, because then you've got 5 fingers remaining. You can get through the idea 3, 4, 5 and keep it going. I'm trying to pick a harder question. Say if they chose 40 altogether. If they chose 40, then there are no numbers remaining. With no numbers remaining, you have to add 2. So adding 2 equals 2, so 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. So by adding 2 to a number which naturally divides by 8, you always land on 2 fingers, so you go 1, 2. When it comes to having 7 remaining, you can either remember what 7 goes to, or what I usually do is just 7 add 2, because you have a take or minus 2 after the numbers 4 to for 5, 6, 7 and 8. 5 you minus 2, so you get 3. With 6 you minus 2, so you start on where the 4th position was. With 7 you add 2, so you start as though you had to add 1 remaining, and with 8, 0, you add 2. It might start to get slightly complicated, I understand that. It is clearly explained in the book, which is probably the best bet for resources of that. But once you've got this pattern down, and it's very simple math, you just divide the number, whatever they give you, by 8, take whatever numbers they've got remaining, which is either 1 to 8, and then calculate it to that finger. You can add or minus 2 for the last few fingers if you wish, just to make it slightly bit easier to get it down to a 1 to 4 number. And whatever number they think of takes you to this finger. You just switch the rolls and switch it to this finger if you wish, because they're both 2 fingers in. And you can take it further, do a hand dagger trick. This is another one of those variations of the spike illusion. If you were to take if you take a knife and put it under a polystyrene cup, just one knife and 4 empty cups with the cup going under one of them, so you've got 5 cups there. You know which one the knife is under, and you put it in the position, you ask a member of the audience to shout out a number, it lands on the cup with the knife in, but they don't know that, so you lift that cup forward, you stab your hand onto the other 4 cups, proving that you're safe, and the cup that they chose by pure random choice of numbers is the one with the knife in it. So you've proven you've got premonition powers. It's pretty cool. Using that approach, there's lots of different tricks you can do with this method, and I strongly recommend you try and use it somehow. Even if you're just doing this finger trick, it's a good mental trick to use for future reference. This next trick is called think of a shape. I'd like you to think of a shape. Think of 2 simple shapes, like a square and a rectangle. But don't think of those ones, think of something different. Think of nice simple shapes. Now put one object inside of the other. You got that? Work, perfect. I'm going to try and read your mind, and I see a circle and a triangle. Now this trick is one of those tricks that works 75% of the time. When it does work, it's very powerful. When it doesn't work, you just pass it off and do something else. There's only 4 basic shapes people think of, and that's the star, that's not the star, it's the circle, rectangle, square and triangle. When you give a hypothesis of what they're supposed to think of, you mention square and rectangle. You say don't think of those afterwards, which eliminates those 2 choices. The last 2 they will think of are a circle and a triangle. Occasionally in that 70% I mentioned, the 30%, one of the objects they're thinking of is a star and a circle. But that's very, very rare actually. It's only 70% of the time, but you get it right every time. So most often they're thinking of a circle and a triangle, and you can read their minds. Think of it, the variation on this effect is if you use colours as well. If you ask them to colour these 2 objects in 2 different colours, the most 2 popular colours are red and blue. So you can tell them that they're thinking of a blue circle and a red triangle. It's either the other way around, but the fact that you got so close to what they're actually thinking of usually works very well for your trick. This next trick is a classic of magic. It's called think of a number. I'd like you to think of a number between 1 and 50, but don't choose a number where both digits are different and both digits are odd. Okay, you think of a number, both digits are different and both digits are odd. Wonderful. Send that picture, send that number to me now. Send it as 2 bright numbers, right at me. I can sense I'm getting something. I'm getting the first number. The first number is a 3, and the second number, it's a bit clear. I'm getting a line here over the top. I'm not so sure if it's a 1. I think it's either a 1 or a 7. I'm going to go with 7. Is it 37? It's 37. Wonderful. This trick is another classic of magic called think of a number. It's a very old effect. It works with popularity. If you ask people to think of a number between 1 and 50 and then make both digits different and both digits odd, the fact is they only have 9 numbers left to choose from. Out of all the possibilities between 1 and 50, there are only 9 numbers that fit that criteria. There are only the 2 most popular choices are the numbers 37 and 31. 37 is almost always the one picked. However, there are times when it goes wrong. But if you go with 37, 6 times out of 10 you'll get it right. With the other percentage of the time, with 31 being the second most popular, what I'm doing is I'm saying the 1 and the 7 are very similar in shape. I'm saying I think it's 31, but I'm going to go with 37. Which means if you get it right with 37, voila. If you get it wrong but it was 31, then you think, wow, that's amazing, you did that quite well, because you're still reading the 1 and the space. So by emphasising that you're seeing a picture, you're just not quite sure what number it is as a 1 or a 7, you win them both in both circumstances. But don't let that trouble you, because usually most times people will think of the number 37 and you can really stun them with some classic mind reading. This next trick is called the invisible coin trick. What we're going to do is to take a coin out here. I want you to watch very carefully as I take this coin, give it a little blow, and it's vanished. People think I'm doing special things with the coin. Watch. I give it a little wave, and I'll make the coin come right back again. In fact, I can even make it invisible by taking this coin, give it a little blow, and now it's gone. I take this coin, I go like this, give it a little squeeze, and now the coin completely disappears. This trick is amazingly simple, and it's amazing that it actually works, but I've fooled even many magicians in fact with this trick, because a lot of people who associate me with coin magic, I do a number of coin tricks. When I came to doing the invisible coin, I could fool them straight away, because what I did is, if you haven't guessed, there is no coin involved. I just pretend to take a coin out from my pocket, I do my moves, and a few things I do here is the moves are quite blatantly obvious. They think they saw a coin and they think they saw it put in my hands. They didn't. But because my hands are in a position as though I've got a coin hidden in this hand, I show it empty, they still think the coin's just hidden here. It hasn't occurred to them just yet that there was no coin because they think I'm hiding one. And by taking this hiding principle, I can pretend that I've taken the invisible coin here, hiding it, and taking it and swallowing it, and like pulling it out from the ear, which is something else I sometimes do. And because the fingers cover the ear, I can supposedly hold the coin hidden like this. I can then make it vanish altogether, and when the coin really does vanish, they're kind of really shocked because they believe you've had a coin the entire time, and then when it comes to finishing it, there really is no coin. Some people thought you had a coin the entire time and you really have made a really startling vanish. It's never occurred to them that you never had a coin. It's a simple trick, and I know a lot of people out there will think it's never going to work. Just give it a go. Next time you just meet someone, what have you got to lose? And if you shock them, you really shock them. Here's another mental effect. It's called the missing £10 note. Say 3 people, they all had £10 each, and all 3 of them decided to go out and buy a television set. They went to the shop, and the TV set cost £25. When they all put their money together, it meant they had £5 left over. They then went to the next shop and bought a TV guide, and that cost them £2. That left them with £3 remaining. Since there were 3 people to begin with, they gave each person £1 back. That meant each person had essentially spent £9 each. But here's the problem, because if 3 people spent £9 each, that's 9, 18, 27, plus the £2 from the TV guide, that's 29. So where has the missing pound gone? This is another little classic mathematical trick. If you follow through the routine, you'll find that the pound gets somewhere hidden amongst the mathematics. It's a bit difficult to explain. If you just follow that routine as it's standard, you'll always find that they're missing a pound at the end of the routine. It's a pretty cool effect, and it's nice when you play it to an audience and get a good response.